Hi everyone, it's great that you could join us. We hope that you're keeping well. Many of you will have seen over the last couple of weeks the terrible death of George Floyd in the media and the horrific images that surrounded that and the ensuing riots and emotions that have been stirred up from this. We really feel that it's time as a leadership to speak into this and to start some conversations around this racism issue. So I've asked my friend Stephen to join me to talk around this. Or for you to talk into this. So Stephen has been my friend. You've been our friend for 10, 15 years?
15 years, yep.
And
we're definitely
godfathers to each other's children.
Yep.
And we know each other pretty well. But,
very well.
But this has maybe made us think we need to know each other even better.
Yes, absolutely.
So I've got some questions that I'd like to ask you that we're going to talk around this. But like I say, it's your voice that I want to hear. So what has this done? What has George Floyd's death done to you?
So watching that was very difficult. It made me realize that people were demonstrating over the world. It was a very difficult thing to see that somebody's life was being sucked out of him on camera. It made me realize that every black man has a George Floyd in him. We all have George Floyds in us. It may not be our lives that are dying. Some of it is our pride. Some of it is our intellect. Some of it is our hearts. There's always a little death in all of us, and that's what's made the demonstrations across the world, because people recognize that we're not all on an even keel. And for me, it brought back those memories, or for me and for my friends and for my family, of the fact that there's still problems that need to be solved, that need to be addressed. And I think it's brilliant that people are demonstrating across the world. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why black people feel that they need to demonstrate, and why George Floyd has become a focus. So yeah, I think there's the good and the bad, but yes, that's my thoughts. Yeah.
So you say it's affected you personally, it's affected friends and family, and we've seen this response around the world. But what about Plymouth? What have you and your family, your friends, experienced of racism in Plymouth? Yeah,
people think that Plymouth is a quiet, sleepy city. Nothing happens on here, but actually there's a lot of subtle racism that goes on. So, for instance, I have been called a nigger, the N-word, twice by some patients because I couldn't dispense their medication. The first time I qualified, which was in Transit Way, I was working as a pharmacist. There were two of us from Ghana, and then some of the staff were actually hiding. They'd never seen a black pharmacist before. I went to Cornwall to dispense for the first time, and some patients refused for me to dispense their medication because they'd never seen a black pharmacist in Cornwall before. Even just a month or two ago, my son was called a black poo. My wife, Della, who went for an interview to be the head of house for her school, which she works in. She went for the interview, passed it, got the job. She was coming back home, and she heard marching behind her, and someone was saying to her, somebody else didn't get a job, obviously, because she got it. And her friend was consoling her, telling her, oh, you didn't get this job. Don't worry, Della got it because they just want to make up quotas for the school to appear diverse, which obviously hurts her deeply. And I could go on and on and on. My cousin has been called the devil by a child that saw him in the bus. We were shopping in Lidl once, Della and I, and this security man followed us all around the shop. I mean, we were shopping for 5 minutes, and everywhere we went, you could see he was following us. And black people know this. I mean, we call it the look. And all of us know it. I've spoken to my friends here in church as well, and they've all been through the same thing. So yeah, I mean, one of my friends in church here, who is a very reputable, very educated professional man, was driving home one day, and he had a lovely car. The police stopped him. Just stopped him. I don't know what happened. They just stopped him, and they asked him, "Does this car belong to you?" You know, obviously, typifying that as a black person, there's no way you could own that car. So it's real in Plymouth, and it is good that people realize that it's real. It is not something that's in far away London or far away in Atlanta. It is real in Plymouth, and we need to address it. Yeah, definitely.
So my next question, I remember us being in a meeting once, and somebody was talking about black people and said, oh, well, they all look the same. And there was a bit of an uncomfortable air, but then they carried on and said, well, they do, don't they? And we've talked about this. I didn't respond to that. And although I was uncomfortable with it and knew it wasn't right, I didn't challenge it. And I've apologised to you over that. I'm not proud of that. But on those lines, what can, as a white man, perhaps representative of white people, if I was asking, what can I do, what can we do to help? What can we do? How do I speak into this? How do I talk about it? What can I do to help? And I'm very aware that we need to do a whole lot more listening and a lot less talking. So, but if I am going to speak into it, what do we do to help?
Absolutely. I mean, people say, oh, I'm not racist, and I hear this every day. I hear it at work, I hear it at church, I hear it when I go to the pub, oh, I'm not racist. But that's not enough. To say I'm not racist, it's not enough. And the Bible says that faith without works is dead. So if you say you're not racist, what is it that you're doing to show that you're not racist? I mean, I can give you several examples, okay? So the less friends and my friends, I'm on Facebook, but the less on Facebook, and people that she thought were friends, when this thing happened about George Floyd and people were demonstrating, there was no comment at all. They didn't say anything. Immediately, there was riots, and this horse in London broke free, and the horse was running. Then they began to comment, oh, this poor horse, what's happened to the horse? Talk about the riots. And then I was saying to herself, where were these friends when we were going through this thing, when this thing, George Floyd happened and people were demonstrating, where were they? So every white person has a voice, and that voice should be used. It should be used on social media. White people should challenge racism everywhere they see it. It could be at work, where people make sad comments. If you keep quiet and you don't say anything, you're just like that fourth official, fourth policeman that was standing by George Floyd doing nothing. You're just the same because you're not challenging it. So you should challenge racism everywhere you see it. At work, everywhere you see racism, it should be challenged. And people should know what you stand for, and it's no good saying I'm not racist, but these are things that white people can do to challenge racism. The second thing people can do as well is to educate themselves, okay? So things happen, and the media portrays it in a certain way. Now, for instance, I can give the instance of Bristol, for instance, okay? Now, people complained because they saw Cecil Rhodes' statue being pulled down. They saw Colston's statue being pulled on and dragged to the sea and onto the harbour. And people the media portrayed it as obviously really bad. Boris Johnson called the people thugs. But there's a reason why they did it. You may not agree with the reason. But for instance, Colston was pulled down because he was a slave master, and when he used to get the slaves and brought them into Bristol, he was afraid that some of these slaves were leaders. You could see that. So what he used to do was throw them into the sea. Yeah, and then sharks behind him would just come and eat up the slaves. So that dragging that statue through the sea, that's what it meant. You understand? Cecil Rhodes was a known slave master, very wicked slave master. So having Colston statue in the middle of Bristol sends a bad message. Okay. Now you may disagree with how he did it, the fact that maybe they should have put in a museum, but there was a reason why they dragged it, and you may not agree with the reason, but it's up to you as a white person to educate yourself and to read, not just take what the media says. You need to read and educate yourself and understand, and this only comes from obviously. I mean, there was a program yesterday on BBC on the Black history. I would encourage everyone to go and listen to that. It's on iPlayer. Yeah. Read it, watch it, then you understand what it is to be black. It is not as we see it. It's not easy. So this is outside church. In church as well, they link. Okay, so if you're in church and you have friends, it's not okay to just meet in community groups. It's not okay to just have a friend in church and just say hello, give them a high five. What needs to happen is for white people to actually engage black people in close relationships. Go to their homes, try their foods, make friends with them so that you can understand what they actually eat, what the music they listen to, and you recognize that black people sometimes have two lives. We call it a mask. Okay, so there's a life that we have in church, in town, when we're walking in town, and there's a different life that we have at home. Okay, the music that we listen to at home is different, the food we eat is different, and you can only know that by integration, close integration. I mean, you know me, you've been to our house, you've seen the food that we eat, you've seen the music that we listen to. It's different, and there's a reason for that. People need to integrate, and that's the only reason how it works, that people come together and are close. I mean, Jesus said that people need to love themselves, we need to love ourselves deeply from the heart. That's what it means. To love someone deeply from the heart means that you share the person's pain, and then you understand. Because if you're not close to a black person, they'll never tell you about the struggles. I don't tell people about the struggles that I go through, because I don't want people to think, oh, we are looking for racism under a tree. Everything we do is racist. Everything we do is racist. We are aware of this, and so as much as possible, you see us smiling or or stuff like that. All the stuff I've talked about today happens to every single black person in this church. And they would, if you call any black person, they'll see the same thing. And so it's something that's what white people can do to help. And they should recognize also that it's what you call a white privilege. It is there, you know. So if I'm a black person and I have a close black friend, close white friend, sorry, I mean, and something happens to me or someone says something bad to me, and the white person stands up for me, then the white person who's being racist will listen because to his fellow white person saying this is not okay. Okay, and then they will listen rather than me having. Obviously, if I say something, obviously we take it strongly. But if somebody, my friend by me who is white, does this, then obviously yes, it's like I give examples from my own life where I've been to some pubs. In Plymouth, not obviously pubs like far in Plymouth, where black people don't go to. And when I enter the pub, you can feel the stares of people around you. You can feel that people are looking at you. But I've got a white friend. I've got close white friends who I go in with, and when I go in, you can see they're trying to make you feel comfortable. They talk to you, they laugh with you, and then other people, white people there, see that, oh yes, this guy, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with a black person coming to the pub. So that's what white people need to do. We need to form relationships and stand with your black brethren and challenge racism wherever you see it and whenever you see it, and read and educate yourselves so you understand what black people are going through. That's what I'll say.
So I guess that even our relationship shows that up. You know, we've been friends for 15 years, but we, you know, it's only recently I've heard the struggles. Only recently I've just heard about your instances with racism. So 15 years we've been, but it's just something we don't talk about. But it's time to talk about it. It's time to get deeper. It's time. I'm never going to understand. I'm never going to have empathy unless I understand more and I ask more questions. And that's what we've got to do.
Absolutely.
What about leaders? I was on a Zoom today with an Elim Zoom for leaders. We had a guy, Mike Royal from the Cinnamon Trust, educating us. I learned so much in that hour from him that I thought I kind of knew what was going on, and I realised I don't. And we need to do more of that. But we talk of leaders. What can leaders of the church do in this?
I'm going to be honest here, okay? I mean, I love this church. I don't plan to go to any other church. I know my black brothers here love this church, but there are things that can be done. Okay, so it's not enough to say that maybe a quarter, going around with bragging rights, saying that a quarter of Plymouth Christian Center are blacks or have minorities. There are things that need to be done to make people feel more included, and it starts from the pulpits. And I'll be blatantly honest. When you're preaching, or when leaders are preaching, they need to recognize that there are also black preachers around, you know. So when you're quoting, I'll just give one example. When you're quoting from people and you're preaching, if you quote from, say, example, a black preacher, maybe John Gray or T.D. Jakes, if you're a black person watching or listening to the preaching, it makes you, oh yeah, this guy understands black people. He's also quoting from a black preacher as well. Okay. Now speakers. Okay. Now I'll be blatantly honest. In Plymouth, since I've been in PCC, we've had 2 black speakers. One of them is Pastor Paul, and I know this will come across not very well, but really, do we really believe that Pastor Paul was here because of his own merits, or was he here because we are helping his church? This is something that we need to really ask ourselves. Another guy that came here was a footballer, which was nice to listen to, but we need to start looking at inviting preachers from Elim who are black. You know, our worship services. Okay. It's good that we listen to we sing Hillsong. It's good that we sing Matt Redman, Elevation Worship. It's good. But we also need to spread the net wider. There's nothing wrong maybe once every 2 months learning an African song. Say, oh, I've got guys from Zimbabwe, they have this worship song. Let's learn it together and sing it together. That makes people feel included. Things like gospel singers, okay? There are a lot more singers, a lot more musicians who are won Grammy Awards who are black. Okay, I can name Kirk Franklin from the US. I can name Israel Houghton from the US. I can name Cissy Winans I'm from the US. In the UK, I can name the London Community Gospel Choir, which have sung lots of songs which have made headlines. There's Sinak from Nigeria, who actually came out with the song Waymaker that we sing in church all the time. Yeah. So worship leaders should also spread their nets, because somebody told me when they heard Waymaker, they felt proud, because this is a song that was made by a black musician from Nigeria. you understand? So if we do these things, it makes people feel included. Yes? Oh yeah, they're singing songs from Zimbabwe, they're singing songs from Nigeria. When a song comes up, oh, this song was made by a gospel singer from Nigeria. Okay, this song was by Kirk Franklin. Because I'll tell you now, black people, even in church, listen to different music at home that we do at church.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean about the black mask. Okay, so we enjoyed it. I mean, I love Hillsong. I go with you guys to Hillsong conference every year. I love it. But there's also songs beyond Hillsong.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to tap into. And I know it's a little bit more difficult for all of us, but these are the things that we can do for people to feel really included. And that's what I think that Elisha can do.
Okay, all right, thank you. There's a lot to think about there, there's a lot to hear, and the whole point of starting these conversations is that they continue. And we want to speak to more people, we want to hear from more people. Like I said, I keep saying it, but we want to do not so much of the speaking, but we want to do the listening. We need to find out what this is like, because there's probably a lot of people that aren't even aware of racism. Some of the things you've said will come as a shock to a lot of people because they just don't think that it happens here, of all places, but in Plymouth, but it does. Yeah. It's a reality. Have you got anything you want to say to the black community in our church?
Yes. It's very easy for me to sit here and obviously talk about what white people do, but us black people have a lot of things to do. We have also a massive responsibility to make sure that diversity happens. How do we do this? We need to also, it goes the other way. We need to make friends, close friends with our friends that are whites as well. Okay, you need to go into their homes. You need to forge close relationships so that you can also understand the white perspective. Do you understand? There are things that we do in England, or what white people do in England, that we may not necessarily do in Africa. But then you have to, if you empathize, then it is more likely that they would also empathize with you because you're also making the first step. Okay, we complain about things like representation, and I agree there needs to be more representation in the church from the eldership and for stuff like that. But we also need to make ourselves available, okay, for these things to happen. Okay, and things like education, we need to also learn about England. Okay, it's not just white people learning about Africa or Ghana or Nigeria or wherever. We also need to learn about England. Okay, what is it? Winston Churchill and all Francis Drake and all these people that we hear of, we need to study about them so we understand. So that when people are talking to us about when we're talking to people about our black culture, we can also meet them. When they talk about the English culture, we can also meet them halfway, and because you understand them, it makes them easy for them to understand you because they can see you're making the efforts.
Okay.
And the black people also need to educate their children, make them feel proud that they are black. Because I know there's a lot of racism that goes on in Plymouth, particularly in the comprehensive schools. So black parents also need to educate their children, make them feel proud, educate them about their where they come from, their origins, so that they can also feel comfortable in their skin. So when they are racially abused or racially downtrodden, they can also be proud and speak up. We need to speak up, basically. And I think that's what I would say.
So just to close then, you talk about speak up. That it's time for people of all colours, of all cultures, all races to speak up. Can you just remind me of that Martin Luther King quote on silence?
Yeah, I mean, it's a quote that I love, and he basically said that in the end, we will remember more the silence of our friends more than the words of our enemies. And I love that quote, because if something happens to me, or there's a Facebook post or a post on Instagram that is clearly racist, and my friends who are on there do nothing, that is silence. And that hurts me more than the people that actually spring out the racist hatred. So if people stand with me, they're not silent. And I've spoken to all my friends about this who are black, and they say the same thing, that they get disappointed that their friends on Facebook who are whites don't comment on the vitriol and the stuff that people are posting. So the best thing that I can say is that, yes, don't want no silence. You need to stand with us and voice the fact that you are against racism and you are pro-black, basically.
Time to speak up.
Yeah, time to speak up, yes.
Okay, thank you, mate. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, mate. Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.